I'm going to shake you guys a little bit if that's okay. I'm going to try to anyway.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I'm still working this out. This is one of those ones that's up here, and I'm still working it out. I have a handle on it. Did anybody look Becker up? I'm an eternal optimist, so I'm still going to ask every time. Does someone look Becker up?
Oh,
Okay. It says there that he's a cultural anthropologist. Did anybody look at the dates of his life? Anything stands out to you about this? Thank you. John's got y'all.
I'm trying. Wait. Okay, here's the days. I'm trying to figure it out.
He did it. I shamed him into it by saying that, so now he's going to do the math on it. Somebody, use your toes if you have to.
Come on, guys.
And he lived over 50.
Yeah, so he dies at 49 years old, before his 50th birthday.
Oh, fuck,
50th
that's
year.
shame.
So he dies relatively young, I mean, in terms of being an academic. He's an interesting academic in that he was fired from a bunch of universities. He was fired from UCLA, if I'm not mistaken. He ended up getting rehired. But he supported a guy named Thomas Saz. And all of you who are, you know, I shouldn't say, that's a terrible thing to say. I'll say it anyway. I shouldn't let it stop me just because it's a terrible thing, right? All of you who are pushing, like, who are really happy that weed's legalized now, and that you want the other drugs legalized, that's all thanks to a guy named Thomas Saz, who was a, I guess, philosopher, anthropologist, who was fired himself from a whole bunch of places because he pushed for policies to legalize all drugs. He believed that making drugs illegal caused a lot of problems in society, and if we just accepted them as part of what humans wanted to do, that we could actually, we'd be fine. And so he supported Thomas Saz, just in his right to speak, not just in what he said, but in his right to speak. I don't actually know what Becker thought about that specific issue. But just for him saying, hey, this guy has a right to speak, he got fired from places. But anyway, in 1974, he publishes a book called The Denial of Death. And that's what he's best known for. It ends up winning the Pulitzer Prize, which is maybe the most prestigious award you can get for a book. The most prestigious award you can get is a Nobel Prize, but that's for like a lifetime of work. He wins the Pulitzer Prize. He's awarded the Pulitzer Prize for his one book, The Denial of Death. And if any of you, another thing, if any of you are interested in reading it, let me know. I can send you a PDF. I have a free PDF copy of it.
Awesome.
But it's a challenging book. Not all the sentences are this difficult. This one is a particularly hard one. But in short, in the book, he argues that as a human, you've got these two natures. You've got this obvious one, which is biological, and that's the one that you're living, breathing, growing, and that you're going to die from. This is your body, all the chemical processes of your body. He argues that there's also a second part of you, and we're going to see more of this if I'm with you in the second semester, which is symbolic. There's a symbolic life. I was talking before, I think, with you guys. If I came in here and I told you about my friend Keith, I said, man, Keith is a lake. Keith is a lake. What am I telling you about Keith?
Large.
He's large? Wait.
He is water.
He's water.
Very open-minded.
He's open-minded. And what does a lake bring to mind?
Deepness.
He's deep. He's calm. Yeah. And Keith, by the way, is all of
He
these
goes
things.
forward.
He's also water.
He's all these things. He's water. He's very water. You know what I mean by
He's
this?
70% water.
What do I mean by this? I say he's water.
Malleable.
Malleable, yeah. He's fluid. He's able to move. In fact, sometimes you might hear me say something like, if you came to me and said, Scal, I need you to, I don't know, can you hold this thing for an hour? Oh, good example. If you ever come to one of my classes, you'll be doing, let's say, burpees, and I'll say, all right, 5 minutes of burpees, go. And then I'll get down to 1 minute, and I'll say, about 1 minute, you can do anything for 1 minute. That comes from Keith. Keith said that one time. He had to do something for 6 months, and he thought, I can do anything for 6 months. He's so fluid. He's so malleable. The point is that if I said Keith is a lake, you all kind of already understood what I meant by that. I didn't have to explain to you what his personality was like. And then even when you said he's like water, or he's water, I said, right. And then you kind of understood what I meant by that. That he's fluid. He's able to move and not get caught up. That's the symbolic part of you. I don't need to come to you and explain to you what Keith is. All I need to do is tell you Keith is this. Now, there's a part of your life that you understand. A big part of your life, a big part of your psychology is an omnipresent, constant awareness that this is going to happen, that you're going to die. And it settles in very early on in your life. And even if you say, I don't think about that, his argument is that you're always thinking about it. Maybe you just don't realize it. It's in your unconscious. It's a constant unconscious drive. He argues that even things like depression, anxiety, all of these things go back to this terror of death. And so he argues that this is the part of our lives that we invest in because this is our hope for surviving death. And so think about the kinds of things that you want to do in life. I don't know, does anybody here want to have a family? Yeah. Anybody in here, I don't know, you're a fan of a sports team? You know, stuff like that. All of these things that we do, we might even say, if you like music, you wear a T-shirt from one of your favorite artists, and then you show up in a room and you see somebody else who has a T-shirt from your favorite artist. Now you know that you two are joined. He argues that all of these things that we're doing, we're trying to symbolically survive death. And by the way, that even includes things like building buildings, because we're trying to create some sort of a monument that we had, a monument for ourselves that's going to survive death, so that even after you die,
It's right there.
what's that?
Oh, like even if you survive death and you build something from it, it's still going to be there.
Yeah, we don't survive death. Even when we die, we know that thing is still going to be there. I think I told you back in May, I was talking to a dude who lives up in Los Angeles, and he was Antelope Valley, and he was an old guy, and he was talking about all these like parking structures that he has built, because he was an engineer. He built a parking structure over Horton Plaza. He built parking structures all over the world, and he's sitting there and he's nodding, and he's just like, some of those, he says, most of those still stand today. Like this was his thing in life, and he was telling me this from a chair in his family's house. I think he's in his late 70s, if I'm not mistaken, maybe early 80s. So he has a family, he has these buildings, and he was talking to me about, he was trying to connect with me on a whole bunch of levels. There were a few of us who were there. The point is that this symbolic life of yours is, we can think of it, what he refers to it as, is an immortality project. The things in your life that you're doing because you're trying to survive death in some way. In other words, of course your body's going to die, there's no denying that. But that there's some part of you that you're trying to leave behind in the world, so that in that sense at least, you're immortal. Maybe you're trying to leave behind a building, maybe you're trying to leave behind a family that's going to keep going. But you recognize, though, your own littleness, and that's the thing that drives it, because you recognize that on this planet, you're only one of 7.5 billion people. So how much do you matter out of that 7.5 billion people? Well, maybe you don't matter so much. Maybe actually you do, but that's second semester. But first semester you don't. And so what you do is you get married, and you have a family. And now, as little as you now matter twice as much as you did before, because you're part of this family. And then if you have children, you can multiply that out, and as long as there are children, as long as your line is being passed on, you can multiply your meaningfulness down the line exponentially like this. If you never do this, if you never get married, if you never have children, and you just stay solitary, then this is the thing that causes terror in people. And this is the thing that a lot of men are struggling with right now, this terror of not being able to find mates. And interestingly enough, women are struggling with the same things because they're waiting longer and longer to get married and have families. So there's this idea of, I can have it all. I can have the career, I can have the family, no, you can't. It's very rare, it's very rare. We have to make these choices. So the question becomes, to what do you join yourself? You know, a lot of men are struggling with this right now. I'll give you some data in a bit. Maybe I don't matter, but you know what? I've got an SD hoodie on, and that means I'm a Padre fan, and now that joins me together with the whole Padre family. You'll notice that the way that people talk about these things, you know, the Raider Nation, the Padre family. You know, we use these kinds of words to connect us with lots of other people because we want to make ourselves matter in these ways. Yes?
So that could be, when you mention like you have to leave something symbolic before you die, and it's and you're remembered as a monument. So that explains like why like a lot of historians leave like either like a statue themselves or like something people would remember them by, so they would always talk about them in history. So later on, even to now, we still talk about them. So it just feels like they never died.
Yeah.
Well, they did, but you know.
But we still know who they are.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about the billions of people who have lived before, think about the people who we know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so few and far between. Yeah, and then even then, like for example, Nebuchadnezzar. You guys know who Nebuchadnezzar was, yes? You don't know who Nebuchadnezzar was?
Sorry, we're
My goodness.
sorry, we're Gen.
No, it's not you. There's about probably a 1/4% of people in the world who know who Nebuchadnezzar was. I'm just giving you a hard time. But Nebuchadnezzar was a guy who conquered the entire known world of his time.
God dang.
Yeah, so now Genghis Khan did too. Well, he didn't. You know, he didn't conquer the whole known world of his time. But the point is that I ask you now, 2,000 years later, who is Nebuchadnezzar? And outside of some very specialized professors, few people know who he is. You'll hear the name sometimes, by the way. If any of you guys watch The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, the name of their ship is the Nebuchadnezzar. There's a reason it's called the Nebuchadnezzar. But my question to you is, what are you going to do that's greater than conquer the entire known world of your day? And so if you're living to be remembered, then you're living a fool's dream. You're not going to be remembered. Show of hands. How many of you guys, and keep your hands up, how many of you guys know your parents' names? Okay, keep them up. How many of you guys know your grandparents' names? If you don't know them, put them down. How many of you know your great-grandparents' names? How many of you know your great-great-grandparents' names?
I mean, I've seen my tree.
Exactly. And that's, we're going back now 3 generations. What are you going to do that's going to have you remembered for more than 2,000 years? I'm going to live forever. I'm going to do something. No. You can't achieve immortality that way. And you know that because your body dies, you die. But the things that you leave behind are the things that create immortality for you. And so Becker argues that these are the things that we pour our lives into, whether we realize it or not. And that's one of those things that causes some of us to rise over things that others just put down. Because if you accept this thing of just biological death and you succumb to the terror of death, then you don't do anything with it. But if you're aware of it, you think, how can I possibly live beyond this? And again, it's not a conscious thing necessarily. It could be, but maybe not. I have a friend of mine who, a very long time ago, impregnated his girlfriend, and he did it intentionally against her wishes, because, yeah, long story, but it was because he planned to kill himself. And so he wanted to leave something of himself behind in the world. And so he did this. Yeah, and now when we sit there and we hear something like that, we just say, it's terribly selfish. Yes, it is. But all I'm saying is understand it, though. Doesn't mean we have to be okay with it, but we should understand it. That's the immortality project. That's what he's engaged in, to make himself immortal in these ways.
I get it.
So, yeah, and that's the things that when you start to look at people and you wonder why people do the things that they do, it isn't so much that we have to forgive it. No, we should forgive it, ultimately. Because does anybody deserve forgiveness? Probably not. But forgiveness is more about you than it is about the other people. It's about what you're doing. It's not about what they did. It speaks to your character. And if you choose to, you choose to. If you don't, then you don't. But it isn't about forgiveness. It's about understanding. This is what motivates people. And now you can use this for good or evil. Being aware of this. If you're aware of this, you can use this to manipulate people. Or you can use it to help people. You can use it to help yourself and promote yourself, because now you realize, why am I trying to do this one thing? Why is this thing so important to me? And that's probably why. There's something underlying that's driving you to do those things. So I guess that my question, and obviously there's no answer for it just yet, but maybe you'll have an answer for it. I guess my question is, what's your immortality project? What's the thing that you're doing in your life that's going to be designed to carry you way past your actual physical death? And if you can get about the business of that, and again, by the way, maybe that's it. Maybe you're going to create a business that's going to outlast you. Maybe it's finding a way to join yourself to other things that can be bigger. Yeah.
When you mentioned what you said about, the name of the Matrix ship, like what they named it after, is this the guy or is this the person? He's a king. Is this what he is?
No, it's just a picture of him.
Oh, and
That's
then
not him.
oh yeah. By the way, the Grant Lee Buffalo. It is a band.
Oh, it's a band. It's a whole thing. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And then for when you mentioned Ernest Becker, from what I got from my look up from his earlier life, he was part of. He was involved with the World War II, and he would help liberate Nazi concentration camps. That's what I got from it. And then later on,
So is this a guy who knows something about death?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe a little something?
Yeah.
I
well,
mean, if you're gonna talk
And by the way, how much does he know about death? Did you read about how he died?
how he died by he died to cancer, colon cancer.
When?
When?
Did you read that?
Yeah.
Wait, colon cancer.
It's in
Real pain in the
1972.
ass. What's that?
He died like when? November 1974.
And when does his book come out?
When did his book come out?
By the way, this matters.
Oh, I need to find the book. Wait, which is it?
Not exactly. So
Yeah.
his book comes out 2 months after he dies.
2 months?
Yeah. In other words, he was working on it, knowing he was dying. He was working on this book about the denial of death, and that's why it's called the denial of death. It's not to deny death. It's to deny it. I'm not going to let death take me. I'm going to survive death in these ways.
Oh.
I'm denying death's power over me. And so, if you go online, there are interviews between him and a guy named Sam Keen, I think it is, and there are interviews from his deathbed about his work in his book. This guy's dying. He's talking about dying. This is a guy who knows a little bit about this. And so, yeah. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?
Wow.
Yeah.